Dune Awakening is finally out, but is it right for you? This game is rather unusual and it won't be for everyone, but today I'm going to give you my assessment of who the game is for and if it's worth your time. Let's get into it. Firstly, some context so you know I'm not just waffling. I've played a good chunk of the Head Start launch whilst working on videos, but I've also played the weekend and creator betas and the closed beta, totaling over 200 hours. This video won't focus so much on each granular detail as much as it will the general layout, as I think the latter will give you a better scope of what you can expect. So, let's begin. Dune Awakening is about, of course, Arrakis. It's set in an alternative timeline where Paul Atreides is never born, which ends up saving House Atreides from their demise at the Siege of Arrakis. Thus, the world you find in Dune Awakening is a bit different from the films and the books, but still familiar enough to be Arrakis. Houses Atreides and Harkonnen wage war on the planet and you can pick a side, or go it alone. The game has a long and deep overarching main quest, which I won't spoil any of here, but you can also explore and survive at your own pace, choosing to align yourself with a faction, uncover the secrets of Arrakis, or beeline straight for that elusive spice melange. The gameplay itself in Dune Awakening is familiar, though slightly different from many popular survival titles. This isn't a hardcore survival experience akin to something like Scum. You won't be micromanaging your nutrients, but it's also not a game where you just have to remember to eat and drink once every couple of hours. Arrakis is an unforgiving planet, and between the constant thirst, blazing sun, worms, and vicious sandstorms, survival is a difficult task in the early game that gets a bit easier later on, but never truly disappears. The game does give you some leeway though. Dying to almost anything will drop a portion of your loot on the floor and will damage your gear a bit, but anything lost is safe if you can get back to your grave and pick up your loot. The exceptions are the sandstorm and the worm. If you die to them, you lose everything and can't get it back. I've seen a few people complain about this being harsh, but honestly, I think it kind of reinforces the danger of these elements, and it's not too hard to avoid them. The risk factor is just higher when they're present. Generally speaking, the gameplay loop itself is a fairly standard sandbox, forgive the pun. It ultimately boils down to getting out into the world, gathering loot and rare resources, returning home, improving or maintaining your gear, expanding your base and so on, and eventually pushing to the next more difficult area. It's a slow, steady progression, and if you don't rush it, this portion of the game can take up a lot of time, but it's a genuinely satisfying experience. As for the endgame, we'll talk about that a bit later. In general, if you're familiar with survival games, the gameplay loops found here will feel quite natural. One question that has come up is about Dune's genre. Is it a survival game, an MMO, RPG? What exactly is it? The correct term would be an open world survival MMORPG, but that does need to be qualified. The use of the term MMO to describe Dune has seemingly confused a fair amount of people. By technical definition, it is an MMO, given the server structure and how many players can end up in some of the late game areas. However, MMO in the general lexicon has come to mean a certain style of gameplay. RuneScape, World of Warcraft, New World, ESO. Dune is not like them, and I don't think it's trying to be either. It has some similar systems, a large endgame PvP zone with many players, a centralised trading hub, and large-scale social interactions. Dune is an MMO by technical definition, just meaning lots of people playing online, but it doesn't feel like the typical definition of what most people would describe as an MMO. I would instead say that Dune is a multiplayer survival RPG. It is online only, you will always be in a server with other players, but Dune feels like a survival RPG to me, just with multiplayer elements. It is admittedly a bit of a hybrid product, merging a few different things together, which I think is where some of its more unique aspects come from and why it is a bit different than most survival games you might think of. However, if you're familiar with the typical MMOs one would think of when they hear that term, some of the core aspects of those aren't really present here. Again, it's technically an MMO by textbook definition, but for the most time, it just feels like multiplayer survival. Speaking of which, what's the social aspect of the game like? Do you have to interact with other players, or can you go it alone? Well, I'm currently working on a solo playthrough series, alone on Arrakis, and I'm happy to say that you can play Dune Awakening solo up to, and probably including parts of the endgame. You'll see other players out and about in the world, but you don't have to interact with them. So long as you're not in one of the few PvP zones in the main map, they can be safely ignored if you prefer. Loot from chests in the dungeons is also instanced to each player, so if you're running an eco lab alone and somebody else comes in, you're not forced to share or rush to take the loot for yourself, you can both loot in safety. Where the major social aspect of the game comes in is in the endgames, guilds and, shocker, I know, the social hubs. The hubs are places you'll have to go for various quests, to pay tax for your base, find traders, etc. Of course, it will likely be easier to be social here and to strike up a conversation with other players, but also many people here will be doing their own thing, getting trainers, handing in quests and so on, so it's not like you have to come in feeling ready to socialise. You can pop in, do what you need to do, and leave. Guilds are, by nature, almost always a social experience. If you join one or invite friends, well, that is social gameplay. Guilds are necessary to take part in some of the endgame activities, but you can also create a solo guild, so it doesn't have to be social, and you don't have to have players available aside from yourself to create that guild. However, the system does feel like it's mostly set up for you and your friends to play together, or to recruit strangers. The endgame is where social gameplay is at its apex. The Landsraad political system is the PvE endgame, where players from houses Atreides and Harkonnen compete to finish tasks and gain the favour of the minor houses to win the Landsraad term and select a weekly bonus for their faction. This doesn't mean you need to go and talk to players, but it's kind of pseudo-social, as the progress other players make on tasks will affect what you might want to do or even can do in the Landsraad. The Deep Desert is the PvP endgame, and that's absolutely a social experience. Given, the socialisation will come in the form of rockets, darts and blades, but that's the nature of PvP. Solo players can apparently rat their way in, sneak around and get loot, but running into another player here will almost certainly involve some form of interaction, whether that's agreeing not to fight, running away and getting chased, or lobbing grenades at each other. In a nutshell, Dune is a social game, but it can be avoided mostly with little consequence. The endgame is where the social aspect is at its most prevalent, and it is nearly unavoidable there to a degree. Player progression is also a big factor in Dune Awakening. If you want to feel like you're actively improving and making progress, Dune does that really well. You can progress your own character by levelling up, unlocking new abilities and tech, completing quests, upgrading your base and gear, and moving further north where the game gets harder but the loot gets better. There's also the houses Atreides and Harkonnen, factions you can join and follow their questlines to rank up and unlock new exclusive things in the faction by devoting yourself to their cause. There's also the mainline story quest, which is a pretty long and in-depth storyline that will take you through the story of the Fremen and beyond. This is a pretty standard main quest layout with cutscenes, important unlocks, new environments and so on, and it's a big part of the game as valuable technology and abilities are locked behind parts of this questline. Progression in the PvE endgame feels pretty solid. The game gives you tasks in the Landsraad and you can work towards them, giving you a nice sense of accomplishment, something to aim for, and some unique rewards if you made enough progress. PvP is probably a little less progress driven, but PvP is mostly about the fights anyway, so that's to be expected. That being said, of course you will be fighting over very valuable resources, so there's something else to aim for, not just the fight itself. Dune's progression systems are honestly pretty satisfying and can feel very rewarding. Even if it's just going a little further than you did before to reach an enemy camp or grab a few more rare resources, there are many times where I felt like I'd accomplished something, and that is present throughout most of the game. In terms of playstyles, Dune I think does this quite well. Whereas some games just let you be a jack of all trades, and Dune does allow that to a degree, you can also specialise into unique builds catered to your playstyle. The mysterious Bene Gesserit with their manipulation abilities, the battlefield tactics of the Mentat, the keen blade play of the Swordsmaster, or just the storm of darts and grenades that is the Trooper. You can specialise or generalise in any of these skill trees to unlock new and passive abilities, alongside boosts to your stats, and you can mix and match once you've unlocked the skills to create something unique and perfectly catered to how you want to play. Furthermore, you can respec as well. It is on a pretty lengthy cooldown, I think 48 hours at the time of recording, but once you choose your build, if there's something you want to tweak that you don't quite like, you can indeed do it. Though Dune Awakening has of course not long released, many people will also be asking how it will change over time. As a live service, change is expected, and we have a rough idea. Around about the first year we'll have paid DLC packs with cosmetics and side stories alongside free updates that will expand the main story too, and probably add quality of life stuff, new features and so on. Beyond that, the team has said they have a 10-year plan for Dune Awakening that likely involves more DLC and expansions, alongside new areas to explore, resources, a new faction coming after launch, and at some point will even end up going off-planet. The monetization model of this game at the moment is pretty fair. You buy it to play it, and you can purchase the DLC pack separately or in a season pass too. There's no battle pass or in-game cash shop as of right now, which I'm sure people will be happy to hear about. When you're in-game, all you have to worry about is playing the actual game, not completing arbitrary tasks for a battle pass, or trying to avoid in-game advertisements for a cosmetic bundle in the store. Black Ops 6, I'm looking at you. As for how many hours you'll actually get out of the game, I think it really depends on how you play. If you're a solo, I could see you getting maybe anywhere between 50 to even top end 100 hours before you comfortably reach the end game. That'll likely be a bit shorter for guilds, and if you take your time you can really stretch it out. Like I said, I've got over 200 hours, and to be fair, I haven't seen and done everything, but I do quite like taking my time. When you get into the PvE and PvP endgames, playtime could be as high as you want if you enjoy those systems. The Landsrad offers a weekly set of things to do with a clear path to victory and claiming the unique rewards, and the PvP endgame is, of course, PvP. It has a huge amount of replay value because you're there for the fights and the loot, of course. Finally, I wanted to touch briefly on performance. My rig is nothing special, but I've been pleasantly surprised. I always prefer frames over graphical fidelity, so I defaulted to the low preset immediately and averaged around 100 FPS. I took a chance on bumping some stuff up to medium and put DLSS on quality, and it's been rock solid at between 90 and 100 FPS most of the time. The game looks incredible, even at these settings, and plays quite smoothly. However, the devs have urged players not to try and play on systems below the recommended spec, and to play the game only on an SSD to speed up load times. It is what it is in that aspect. If you're interested in Dune but running a really out-of-spec PC, I would say hold off until you can upgrade. It's just not worth trying to play this game at 30% render scale at 10 FPS. Dune is a demanding game, and it kind of is how it is in that aspect. So, to bring everything together, is Dune Awakening right for you? Whilst I've been pleasantly impressed with it, I do think it will end up being a bit of a Marmite game in terms of some people will love it, some people will hate it, and that's fine. The game itself has all the usual trappings of a survival RPG. If you've played Conan, Valheim and Shrouded Ark, you'll probably feel at home here. The only difference is this has to be online, whereas the other games generally don't. There's more than enough familiarity to latch onto, but what Dune does differently is what sets it apart. Now, it's not some crazy genre blend, it doesn't tilt the concept of a survival game on its head, but it's different enough that it feels like its own thing. On top of that, as of launch, the game has a lot to do. It can feel almost slightly overwhelming at times, but honestly, I quite like it. Between all your upgrades, the quests, the main story, factions, you're building your base, travelling, exploring, there's a lot going on. Loads of things to do and tons of depth to invest in. This isn't a game you'll put away after 10 hours unless you don't like it, of course. What may sway some people away is the more social aspects. Whilst they're only really obligatory in the endgame, directly in PvP and indirectly in PvE, the game is designed to be social. It's multiplayer only, so you will see other players out and about, and frankly, you will likely get a little bit of a better experience playing with others, such is the case for many games. However, you don't have to have friends to play Dune, you don't need to be social for probably 90% of it. It is playable solo up until and including parts of the endgame. I do worry about how much a solo player can do in the Landsrad and the Deep Desert, but I think that's part and parcel of the game itself. I will say as well, every player I've ran into thus far and spoken to in-game has actually been really nice. It's been quite a pleasant surprise. Ultimately, only you can say if Dune Awakening is right for you, but I think the game is compelling enough that it's worth trying for survival fans. There's more than enough transferable concepts here to pull you in, and what it does differently is done quite well. I'll be honest, I didn't think I'd like Dune at all when it was first announced, but time after time it's reeled me in and kept me around. I think the gameplay loop is fun, the environment is incredible, and even the minutiae of exploring, driving, mining, it's all quite polished and just feels satisfying to do. Dune is a game that is kind of hard to explain in terms of what sets it apart, and some of those things, I'll fully admit, don't translate all that well to a YouTube video. However, hopefully this big yap session has helped you to get a better grasp of what to expect in Dune Awakening and ultimately assess if it's worth your time. Anyway, that will wrap us up for today. I hope this video has helped to answer any important questions you may have. I'm currently running a sale over on my Patreon to celebrate the launch. You can get 30% off your first month on select tiers by using code DUNE30 at checkout. I've got a ton of Dune content already up, alongside some Conan videos yet to release too, and if you join the $10 or above tier, you'll get early access to those videos straight away. Again, code DUNE30 at checkout, offer valid until June 30th, and if you have any more questions about the game, leave them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer as many as I can. Thanks for watching, and a massive thanks to our wonderful, esteemed coffee cultists for continuing to support the channel over on Patreon. If you want to support the channel here on YouTube and get some exclusive perks, take a look at the new channel memberships available by clicking join just below this video. Take care, and I'll see you soon.